Good evening. My name is Sandra Craig, and I represent the Etiquette Foundation of Illinois. You are watching a live interactive call-in television program brought to you on CAN TV 21. Let's talk etiquette. During the next 25 minutes, my very special co-host will be that dynamic Mr. Nathan Wright. I invite you to call in with your questions and your comments. We have another exciting show for you tonight. Please participate. Call a neighbor, a friend, and tell them, tune in to Let's Talk Etiquette. You can call in with your questions and comments at area code 312-738-1060. 312-738-1060. Our phone lines are now open. Welcome, Mr.
Wow.
Wright.
Here we are again.
Yes.
This is just so much fun. I enjoyed being your co-host. And you're right, we do have a very interesting show for our viewing audience this evening.
Yes. Something I think everybody that watches will want to call in and make a comment.
Please call.
Okay. We talked last week about the young man in the photo that appeared like he was taking something from the convenience store, 2 bottles of wine in Ferguson. And you posed a question to our viewers. You said, is he the victim of a flawed government public school system or the victim of a corporate-sponsored and promoted degenerate value system?
Yes.
Or both? Would you comment, Mr. Wright, please?
Well, if you look at that picture there, you'll see a young man, probably a teenager. He may be older, but I'm assuming he's a teenager. And he has his pants sagging, and he has his shorts, his underwear are showing. And then he's covering his face with his T-shirt, but he has 2 bottles of wine. And this was a store in Ferguson 2 days after the shooting of Michael Brown. The store was broken into by protesters, and they proceeded to steal items from the store. Now, what provoked that young man to behave in that manner? Is it what you see in that photo, that his clothing had something to do with it? But I really do think so, and it's a part of the degeneracy that's being promoted to our young men that is causing him to behave this way. And I think there were some other questions that we raised about his behavior.
Well, I know you also said that, the criminal charges that he might face would be unlawful breaking and entering, theft of property, possible sentence 5 to 10 years in state prison, cost to the taxpayers $300,000 to $500,000 a year for 2 bottles of wine that probably only totaled to about $15.
Right. Yes.
I think he'd come out better just going to the store and paying for the 2 bottles of wine.
Yes, that's the point. That's the entire point there. But he was provoked and influenced to do what we see him doing. So was he created and influenced to do these kinds of things based on this cultural lifestyle that we see our young men especially buying into, adapting? And I think there's another photo that we brought tonight to kind of show the similarities in what is going on with our young men. Now, this photo here is of 50 Cent and Soulja Boy. And as you can see how they're dressed in this picture here, Sandra.
Yes.
His shorts are showing, his pants are sagging, and 50 Cent is the person standing behind him. And look how his face is covered. You see that?
Yes, I do.
I mean, that looks like somebody from the Middle East, what we call terrorists, in that ensemble there. And this is what is influencing our young people, our young men in particular, to behave in the way that young man was behaving there in that store as he fled that store with those 2 bottles of wine. And so, it's clear where those influences are coming from.
Right. Now, Mr. Wright, you also said that, have our young men gone insane, or are they simply victims of Sony and Warner Brothers records? and the social corrupting degeneracy of hip-hop gangster rap. So do you think that played a part in the way these young men are dressed? And of course we know the photo with 50 Cent and Soulja Boy, because those are their idols, you know, they listen to that type of music, so I'm sure the way they dress influenced them.
Yes, absolutely. This is on the cover of a magazine, and now they put these magazines at low level on the newsstand so that our 8, 9-year-old young men can see this image here. These are major multi-million-dollar corporations who are selling a product to us that is antisocial, that is degeneracy. And our young people, unfortunately, are buying into it. And so this corrupting behavior that we saw in that photo of that young man coming out of that convenience store has to be connected with the influences that you see that's being marketed to our young men by these multi-billion-dollar corporations. And we have to point the finger at who it should be pointed at. And that's Sony and Warner Brother Records, to name a few. There's many more of them in the business, but those are the ones who made all the wonderful movies, Warner Brother movies, that we once went to and saw the nice, you know, clean images as opposed to this violence. They call it action movies now, but it's you know, multiple homicides in the movies today. It's sad.
Yes.
And our young people are going to see that too.
Yes, it is. I believe we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes. Good evening, Ms. Craig. Good evening, Mr. Wright.
Good evening.
Thank you.
You know, on one level, not on one level, but let's just say that I agree with you 100% with what you said so far. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
But I'm going to give you a different perspective that is 100% in the opposite direction of everything you've spoken to up to this point. Now, when we saw that young man, that one picture that was taken of the guy stealing wine, that was a strategic picture. It kind of reminded me of two things. It reminded me of the riots in the 60s during the era when we fought for civil rights, and we had that kind of civil disobedience in the street. And then it also reminded me of the New Orleans flood, and they showed pictures of black people struggling with items, and they called them looters, but yet they also had white people with items that were taken out of the stores, and they were called survivors of the flood. So that was a media interpretation of an image they wanted to perpetrate globally that they can connect to black people, and then by inference mitigate the acceptance of how we're being treated here in America. But now let me just say this. When you saw the picture of 50 Cent and the young man sagging with the clothes, 50 Cent was dressed like, as you aptly put, a terrorist, right? Now, when we look at those people in the Middle East that we call them terrorists, and I believe them to be terrorists, but another viewpoint is they're freedom fighters. Another viewpoint is when we had 9/11, the question was, what did America do to make people fly planes into the building, kill themselves, kill everybody else? What were we doing to cause that kind of hatred? So now, and again, to the people that are monitoring this program, I love America. I love you. But the fact of the matter is,
you're being monitored.
You know, I don't want any of these guys with black suits knocking on my door. It is America. But the thing that I want to say to you is, when we had that civil disobedience in the 60s, then change came after that. Now, I would never advocate burning down our community or any community, but that is the voice of the oppressed. That is the voice of the voiceless. So when these type of, think about it, now we've got, the stuff that was going on in Ferguson before they killed that kid, they were ticketing people and locking them up in jail because they couldn't pay the tickets well, that's called a debtor's prison. There are no debtor prisons in America. They were taking their civil rights away, and they've been doing it for decades.
Yes,
So when all this stuff started happening, it caught attention. The shooting was the last straw, was the straw that broke the camel's back. So now that this thing has happened, now we're finding out. But again, understand, this is after Trayvon Martin. This is after various other black people that have been murdered and shot and killed without any.
Right here in Chicago?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you know, I won't take up too much time, but I just a couple final points. Do you think back to how we had to whine and beg and march for them to bring George Zimmerman up on charges after he killed Trayvon Martin? How we had to beg and whine and plead and march for just to have our basic civil rights that should be afforded to every citizen in this country, okay?
I agree.
So when these things happen, unlike the people that have learned to try and advocate through the courts and through voting, things like that, the youth are saying, as the youth have always done historically in any society in the history of recorded mankind, enough is enough. And so they act out with a rage. They act out without a patternistic behavior, but then the change comes much quickly. When change is guided and shepherded by the people in charge, change, you never see it.
Yes. So, well, I agree with you. Everything
all I'm saying is, these are just some other things put on the table. I want to thank you both for allowing me to do it, and I just want to listen to the sage wisdom that you both have. Thank you.
Well,
thank you. I really enjoy when this caller calls in.
He does. He makes some great points. And I do agree with you, as you well know, with the Michael Brown, you want to call it execution, or, you know, however you want to describe it or characterize it. Yes, the media does shape and project us in a negative light. And this happened like 2 days after the shooting took place. And as you well know, the die was cast the day they shot Michael Brown down and allowed him to lay there in the street for 4 or 5 hours so that that community can see what we do when you try to disobey us. And so I agree. The media in this country has done a terrible job at getting that particular incident correctly. And you're right about the shaking down of that community. $2 million is collected in fines from that community. So they are deliberately punishing that community with those fines and traffic tickets and all of those things that's going down. It's a shakedown of that community. Most people don't realize that. But I do agree. My basic point, and back to the civil rights, yes, I remember very clearly. I was on West Madison the night they shot Martin Luther King. And so I saw what happened, the burning of the west side and the south side down. So I was right there in the streets, and I saw it with my own eyes. And you have a good point there. Some good is going to come from this, hopefully. But from the legal perspective, you know, I have my doubts about it because the cover-up started the moment that young man was shot down. And the law is going to favor that policeman. And you and I both know that if anything proves anything about this country, it has never been just when it comes to you and I, if you are African American. What would you like to say about that?
Well, I'm gonna take the next caller.
Okay.
Caller, you're on the air.
Hi. So, I guess what I wanted to say, in terms of the picture that you posted, I think that it's raised a very sort of interesting discussion between younger people of color and older people of color when it comes to the politics of respectability. I think that, you know, younger people look at that photo and don't necessarily think that the way he's dressed says anything about his character or who he is as a person. That's just him doing him. And that, you know, you shouldn't have to be dressed a certain way in order to get people to treat you with respect or dignity or to be taken seriously. You should be respected because you're a human being. And I guess that obviously during the Civil Rights era when Martin Luther King was killed, the thinking was very different. People protested in their Sunday best. But younger people don't necessarily think all that's necessary. And I just kind of, you know, wanted to know how you respond to that because there's certainly a gap there, at least in my opinion.
Yes. Well, thank you for your call. I would respond by saying how we see our young people dressed today is more a product of the corporate entities that are shaping our value system, that are projecting these negative, I call them negative images, on our young men especially. I don't know if you've tried to sag your pants. It's not very comfortable to do that. And then this affects the way you walk. It affects your whole physical structure. And and if you see this, you know that it is not a healthy way to conduct yourself in public. I'm wearing a suit. This is a professional ensemble. Someone working in McDonald's wear a suit, a professional ensemble. May not have a tie like I have on. But, you know, you have to project yourself in a culture that is in a positive fashion, I say. And I'm saying that because we are etiquette instructors. And we want to teach our young people that appropriate dress is beneficial to you. Yeah. Now, if you want to disconnect from the society, you can do that in a number of ways, including the way you dress. This is your opportunity to say something about yourself that's positive. Now, the way I'm dressed now, you know, you can go to Africa. Professional people in Africa dress this way. Professional people in China dress this way. Professional people in Chicago dress this way. And so you're sending a signal, a message to those who see you, those who view you, that you are expecting a certain kind of respect from them or a certain kind of treatment from the people who see you. I can guarantee you the chances of me being shot down in what I'm wearing is highly least likely. Okay? Now, if I'm dressed like this young man in this picture that we show, there's a greater chance that you could get shot down or you could be mistreated by the police. And so we teach our young people to dress in a neat fashion so that you won't be standing out in the community. You won't be a target, not just for the police, but for other individuals who see you that may feel that you're a gang member. So it's more about you being able to put yourself out into the public arena and do it in a positive way where you can get the kind of feedback that's healthy and wholesome and least likely to get you harmed.
Yes, I agree with you, Mr. Wright, and I thank the caller for their comment. But I would like to say we live in a society where we are judged and looked upon by the way we present ourselves. And we don't know what, quote unquote, the police see as a thug or a gang member. We don't know what it takes, the attire, the representation, the presentation to be considered a gang member. This young man, as you said, might be doing him, but in the eyes of the law, they might not see him as doing him. They may see him as being a gang member, a thug, and he's more likely to be harassed, arrested. And we know now, when that happens, somebody better be praying because you don't know how it's going to turn out. Yes. When you get into the hands of the law, just because he stopped you, a routine stop, and then you wind up dead and you really didn't do anything, but because you were stopped, it's a possibility that could happen. But if at any cost you could even stop the stop by presenting yourself in a manner, as Mr. Wright said, he's less likely to be stopped. And I know you're saying probably because he's older, but Mr. Wright has mentees, and they dress the same way. And they're less likely to be stopped because of the way they dress, rather than like this young man, he would be stopped a lot quicker. Yes. And of course we know if anything we can do to stop from being stopped, that's what we want to do. Because we don't know what's going to happen after that. Especially the records show that it's not good for African American young men to be stopped, to be arrested. So I'm teaching my grandsons, the young men that I spend time with, I'm teaching them. I know this is what you like. This is how you like to dress. But I want you to understand it might be okay to you. You might see yourself as just doing you or being who you are. But you got to remember, there's something else at work here. How are the other people going to see me? Because if you're walking down the street and this young man was walking down the street with you, I'm going to be honest, if it was me and I saw a young man walking down the street looking like that, I probably would hold my purse a little tighter. I would even cross the street. And that's because that's what's been put in our mind. Now, it could be a thug dressed in a suit and I'd be unaware. But I'm just saying, basically, it's the way they're dressed and the way the law sees them. And that's what I want the point to be made, that we must teach our young men that the way you see yourself and the way the law sees you is totally different.
So well said. So well said. And we do. I'm sitting here in a suit, but we do teach our young men about the importance of having a suit. I would guarantee you, you could be 17, 18 years old. If you have a white shirt and a tie on, you're least likely to get assaulted by anyone, and especially the police. You won't see a young man shot down on the west side of Chicago or the south side by the police in a white shirt and a tie. You just won't see it. The only way you would see that, he would have to be running out of the bank with a gun in his hand to be shot down. Okay? And so that's the reality that we live in today.
And you know, Mr. Wright, I'm glad you said that, because the young men that I have saw and heard that have been shot and killed in the street and while being accosted by the police, none of them were dressed in professional attire.
No. And this is almost like a uniform that's a way of protecting yourself.
Yes.
When a young man, I teach my young men the same things. If you go out in public and you have on just a white shirt and a tie, you're least likely to be accosted by anyone, especially the police. And you need to have some protection on yourself out in public today, especially in the hood, where the chances are you're going to be confronted with all kinds of dangers and risk. And so you can be yourself and be who you think you are, but we're only saying that the corporations in this country are contributing to that. That's who's driving this. And it's all about profit. And so you may think this is you, but what shaped your influences? Ask yourself that. Did you see it on TV? Did you see someone in the neighborhood dressing that way? And so I was looking for some of my photos so that we could show my young men, but I couldn't find them. That's what I was busy doing over here.
Okay. I believe we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air. Did we lose our caller?
Hello.
Hello.
This is Lucretia.
Hello, Miss Adams.
Did you lose me?
No, you're on the air, Miss Adams.
You probably need to turn your TV down.
Good. I just wanted to give a quick response to the gentleman and the lady who followed his call. The Etiquette Foundation of Illinois is not a place where you need to defend what's going wrong with the way we are beginning to see ourselves. If you disagree with the way society wants you to live, you have a choice. Continue what you're doing or decide you're going to get on the train and take a ride. My thing is, I don't hear anyone saying to me that they had loved ones who lived through the 60s. I don't think anyone knows truly what the lyrics of the song Strange Fruit is all about. I think if you begin to see what price was paid for you to have the choice to disrespect yourself with your dress, and we haven't even addressed how people speak, the four-letter words that they use to describe themselves and their family and friends. But I'll say this. If you want to continue to do nothing, we have a history right in this city of well-dressed crooks. That was the mob. And they were well-dressed and still did wrong. But they wouldn't have gotten to be the machine that they were had they dressed the way the young people are dressing now, because they wouldn't have been able to blend in and become a part of the crowd. So you can do you, but doing you in the manner that you're doing you is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting things to change. They won't. And
no, you're right.
Our young men as well as our culture need to wake up. It isn't white people that are keeping us from certain jobs and professions. It's the other cultures that are coming here that are prepared. And they're the ones who's getting the opportunities that we should be getting. You won't see other cultures as a band of people walking around with defiance attire on. They have a dream. They think this is the place where they're going to get it, and they're going to dress hard. That's the easiest part to do. Now, learning how the system works, that takes a little bit more effort.
Yeah, and I agree.
But
I agree.
Blend in the crowd. It's no different when you go to get fruits at festivals. What do? You keep peeking through them until you get that perfect one, the one that's worthy of your salad or your soup or your dinner. Society picks over us just like they do anything else. They want the best of the best of the best.
And
so I would challenge my people, you keep doing what you want to do you. And if you look up, you're getting further and further to the back of the line, where in this country, you should be at the front of the line.
I agree totally. You're absolutely.
I rest my case.
You're absolutely right.
Thank you, Ms. Adams, for your call and your comment.
Right. We're socializing our young people to be at the back of the line, to not qualify for anything. And so this society is not going to give you any extra breaks or any other thing that will help you. You're going to have to step up and be involved in getting ahead, and also preparing yourself educationally to get ahead. So if the corporation that wants to hire you requires you to wear a suit, you have to wear that suit. And so they're not going to give you any exceptions, unfortunately.
Caller, you're on the air. Oh, we lost the caller. Caller?
Okay, I lost that caller. Yes.
Okay, well, Mr. Wright, I know you're a mentor, so what were some of the challenges your mentees faced before you became their mentor? I know I saw the pictures, I saw some of the way your young men look and dress now, but what were some of the challenges they faced, and what are some of the positive changes that you have witnessed since you've become their mentor?
Well, you know, when I started out with my young men, they dressed like the young men in the picture in Ferguson. And 90% of the young men you see out on the street today, especially in the hood, are dressed that way. So I realized what they were confronted with and what they were exposed to and what was contributing to why they were acting and dressing in the way they were. And it gets back to the lady said, character. You know, you have to realize you are a citizen and you are required to conduct yourself in a certain fashion. You know, this is all about character too. And so, unfortunately, we've been moved away from what Dr. King and many in the civil rights era, you know, worked so hard to make happen.
Yes, I agree, Mr. Wright. Well, Mr. Wright, would you believe it? We're out of time. Our show is about to end.
Yes.
But I want to thank you for coming today. I appreciate all of your comments. And you will be back next week. I
will be back next week. And thank the callers. And please, tomorrow is a meeting at the Hyatt. So join us at 6:30 at the Hyatt at 22nd Street. And I look forward to seeing you there.
Okay, I would like to say good night to my callers and viewers and ask you to have a great weekend, and please tune in next week. Good night.